How you guys all doing?
Very
We're
well.
good.
We're good.
I'm good.
We're good. Yeah,
Man,
great.
it's so good
Thanks.
to have you all here. I think the only other thing I've done is an interview with, if you guys know Troy Knowlton, the indie author. It's the only other thing I've done. This is the first time I've kind of been with everyone. It's really great to kind of get involved, and especially with PL and Justin. You know, I've known you guys for a while, been wanting to hang out. It's great to have you here.
Well, thanks so much, man. We're a big fan of you. We're a big fan.
Oh,
Again,
thanks,
so you
man.
post great stuff. It's hilarious. I love watching your stuff. So it's awesome.
Thank you. No, I never know if it's gonna like if people are gonna like it or not, but you know, I just put up what I find funny. So yeah, luckily people like it. Mm. So how was your chat earlier, Pierre? How did that go with who was it with Professor Fireballs and that with about Malazan?
Yeah, it was great. It was on AP's channel. It was AP, Janny Wirtz, Bryce from Center Shelf, sorry, and myself talking about book two, Malaiza and Dead House Gate. So yeah, it was great. I mean, anytime you get and actually Stephen Erickson dropped by in the
Oh no
chat
way.
just to answer some questions. Yeah, yeah. So it's I mean, him and AP are great friends. He knows Janny well.
Yeah,
So
of
yeah,
course.
but I mean, it's I mean, anytime you're in those discussions, you just try to I just try to string somewhat of an intelligent sentence together
Yeah,
with those minds in the chat. I feel very inadequate, but that's okay. It's fine. I, I
I
I
feel
tend
the
to learn a
same.
lot, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Have either of you guys read Malazan as well, or
Have we
I've
done what?
tried, but
have you read any of the Malazan books yet?
Oh, yes, a little. So it's a funny story actually, because I've started them 3 times on audiobook,
Okay.
which I would not recommend because there is a lot to capture, here's the funny thing, like I I have not come across any audiobook yet that I would not be able to listen to as an audiobook.
Yeah.
Even like the dense Brandon Sanderson stuff at the beginning where you're not really sure what's going on in like the Way of Kings and stuff, and you're like, still can make my way through it, no problem. But the Malazan stuff, each time I started, I would get farther through the audio than I did last time because I'm like piecing together, okay, this is a different person, different set of characters, different, okay, what's the mythology going on here? What's the narrative style? And there's just like, it's like dripping with information. And you're like, I am missing something really I know I'm missing something. And people say that just reading the book
Yeah.
or the ebook.
Yeah.
So imagine doing that with the audiobook and it's like, you're going to miss a lot more than you want to. So, but
yeah.
the writing was really good. The story was really good. So I finally just said, I'm just going to buy these on ebook and just get around to them when I can, which of course means it's going to be a lot longer before I get around to them. So it's easier for me to listen to stuff on audiobook, driving and doing dishes and that sort of thing. But I had admitted that to Stephen Erickson when I saw him in 2019 at Worldcon. And it was kind of a weird conversation because I was like, yeah, I know you really well by reputation, but I haven't read your stuff. Sorry. I tried to. I couldn't get through it. Not because it was bad.
Yeah.
It was the opposite. I was like,
I
No,
think
oh,
he's
I
probably
get
used to
that.
that by now, though.
yeah. And that's exactly what he said. He was like, yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't
he wrote
surprise
a
me.
I
whole
get
sort
it.
of Facebook
It is
essay
a
on
dense
it.
series.
He was super cool. Yeah.
I mean, the guys at Con are always really cool. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, I went to Fantasy Con the other day.
Yes.
It was a bit of a funny story, actually. I set off, so I thought, well, so when they told me it was at Heathrow, I lived probably about 15 minutes from Terminal 15. And so I was thinking, you know, it'd be maybe half an hour cycle ride. And I looked at Google Maps where the place was. It's actually kind of like the other side of Heathrow. It's about an hour. So I thought, well, that's okay. But, you know, I'm not going to tell my dad that it's an hour cycle and that it's late at night because he'll tell me I can't go because if I get a flat tire or something, he's going to be the one that has to rescue me. And he's not going to do that at that time of night. And so I set off. And I didn't realize it goes down this, what they call the Grand Union Canal, down this towpath. And it was funny. So I got to this road, which was leading to a town called Uxbridge. And my Google Maps, I don't know if it's messed up or something. kept telling me to do U-turns. So I turn around, go to the other side of the road, and then it tell me do a U-turn. So I was stuck. I was like, where does it want me to go? Eventually it worked out it wants me to go down this canal. And I started going down the canal, got right to the end, and I was thinking when I got in there, I thought, oh, there's all this gravel and stuff. I might get a flat tire. I'm screwed, you know. I got all the way to the end, got a piece of wood in my tire, and I was 4 miles away from the place. And I thought, what on earth am I going to do now? Because I'm going to ring my dad up. He's going to be really pissed off. First of all, that he has to drive like 20 minutes when he's going on holiday the next day. And it's like 9 o'clock, but you know, my dad's the kind of person he likes to relax. And I thought, if I ring like my dad, he's going to come get me. He's going to be pissed. And I'm not going to get to meet these authors and these book bloggers and things. I'm only 4 miles away. So I looked it up on my phone. Can you ride on a flat tire? And it said, if the road's flat, you can get away with it for a few miles. And I thought, well, I'm just going to try this and go. And I made it to Fantasy. I made it there with no idea how on earth I was going to get back. But I was like, I don't care. I need to meet these authors. I need to meet Ryan Cahill. If you guys know him, he's come all the way from New Zealand. I was going to meet Zach Argyle, the Fedlight series author. I've got to make it. And so I made it. And then I got there and I couldn't find anyone. And I was stuck in the middle. And because they had the Queen's funeral today, of course. And they had all the police that were coming in from every county to come and be like the extra police. So I was just in this lobby with the police swarming around me and no idea where anyone was, because they were all sort of at the convention and I was just joining them for drinks. I hadn't sort of paid to attend the convention, and I had to message one of my friends that was there and say, come get me, please. And met, I don't know if you know, Craig. He goes as Bookworm online, and great guy. And then I met Ryan, and it was fantastic. I went into the Broken Binding. They'd just done their reveal with Ryan Cahill's Breaking the Bound. They're going to do his first series, his first book on their indie press. And within like a minute, Zach Argyle, who, bear in mind, I haven't really interacted with too much on Twitter, just sort of in the last few weeks. He turns to me and he just goes, Miggins! Or like the biggest hug. And it was great. It was great. And you know, we did karaoke. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos. It was such good fun. And I'm so glad I went. And luckily, I messaged one of my friends and I said, mate, I really need your help. I know he drives around a lot and he's in the area. So can you come pick me up later? And luckily he was around. So yeah, he saved me because I didn't have to worry about how am I going to get back? Because it was very possible that I could have had to walk the 12 miles back home with a flat tire, which yeah. Anyway, that was the story of my first con.
Well, that's a success overall. It sounds like it's definitely a success. So
yeah, but I'm so glad I made it. I mean, everybody in the community is so friendly, so it's great. Yeah. I realized that. Oh, go on.
Oh, that's been my experience. Everybody I've met has been.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, no. Well, there's like 2 exceptions, maybe, but they're very rare. And I won't say who they are because I think there's precedent. People would know people would guess and be like, yeah, I know that guy. He's got a reputation for that sort of thing. But yeah, like it's like 99.9% of people, they're just like super cool, super chill, super fun to talk with. They're like, there are people. Like we're all the same people in different bodies.
It's amazing, and you know, it's incredible when you're sitting there. Ryan Cahill to the left of me, Zach Argyle to the right of me, and suddenly I'm looking across the room, and Adrian Tchaikovsky walks across. I'm like, hang on a minute, is that Adrian Tchaikovsky? And that's Ed McDonald, and what's going on? Like, I didn't even get to speak to either of them, but you know, I was a bit starstruck.
Yeah, I think we all become fanboys when we're around our favorite authors, right? And it doesn't matter, you know, who you are. It's just, you know, you just that feeling, oh my gosh, it's so and so. So that's a really kind of neat feeling. I was at Comic-Con in London, Ontario, not London, England, London, Ontario, where I Canada.
I was getting so excited.
Just this past weekend, it was great, and just, you know, seeing you know, a few celebrities and seeing, you know, the fans. It's just a wonderful experience. And you know, I think what people have to remember is that, this is Justin said, everyone, you know, 99.9% of people writing community, we're all here to boost each other up and support each other and shout each other's work out and, give each other high fives. It's not a competition. Everybody has their audience. We're not competing with each other's as authors and creators. We're just trying to, find our people that like our books and find our audience and shout out about other books that we think are awesome. So, that's the beauty of it.
Well, it's a perfect opportunity to jump in and say maybe we should introduce ourselves a little bit because I didn't do that at the beginning. So do you want to start us off, PL?
Oh, I'm PL Stewart. I'm author of the Drowned Kingdom saga, and I'm also an assistant editor with the wonderful Before We Go blog, led by the incredible Beth Tabler. Oh, I'm honored. Megan's he's
I was
showing
reading
up.
it just before I came on.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm honored. Yeah, and I also co-host Page Chewing with the wonderful Steve Talks Books and Maybe Between the Pages. So we interview creatives in the community, authors, bloggers, podcasters, you name it. So check out Page Chewing. I think you'll find it interesting. Some great guests. So that's me.
Perfect. Justin, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Justin T. Call, sometimes known as Justin Call, depending on whether it's in English or British English or American English. I write dark epic fantasy that's like crossover fiction. It's primarily adult, but with a little bit of a YA lean. My series is The Silent Gods, which is a tetralogy of 4 books that is within a larger super series of 12 books that I have planned about a hero who becomes a Dark Lord. And let's see, I don't write for any blogs or anything like that, although I'm currently a professor of lecture, etc., of writing in English at Southern Utah University. And let's see, I love the Before We Go blog. Beth's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
So shout out to her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And NC?
Hey, I'm NC Koussis. I'm actually, as you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm in Australia. I was born in Australia. And I write kind of dark, grimdark, epic fantasy. Recently just had my debut on Friday, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's been a hectic week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Read it.
I think I sent you a copy actually.
Yeah. I haven't got it yet, but I'll.
Oh damn! Okay, I was wondering if you could show it on the screen. I think I have.
Yeah, otherwise I would do. And
right.
Justin's books are in the loft, I think, at the moment.
That's all right. So the series is about it's primarily a sort of a reimagining of the werewolf tale, and relating that because I'm an Indigenous Australian man. Relating that to experience of colonization and the stories that we lose when we're colonized, and how that had I won't spoil things, but it sort of becomes a journey of discovery through the book, and it's about identity and discovery mostly. Yeah.
That's really cool. Oh, I mean, all the links are going to be down below to go buy each of these guys' wonderful books. But I mean, that's something I love about fantasy, is that it's such a way to explore different things, such as the topic of colonization, and it can be quite cathartic and emotional, and we have kind of the fantastical kind of wrapping around it all, but inside it's heart. Fantasy's trying to tell us something, and we're trying to learn something about the world, and that's something that from each of your books it really shines through, and it's something that I love about fantasy, and it's one of my favorite things. So I can't wait to dive in.
Me too. I can't wait to read that and see. That sounds awesome. But Justin's books have been on the TBR for so long. It's just I have to get to them in 2023.
Yeah.
As long as they're in the TBR, I'm good, right?
Oh yeah, they've been on there for so. I have to get to them next year.
I have the same problem with too many authors that I would be embarrassed to count at this point. So it's not possible for me to feel bad about being in a TBR list. At least I'm in the list. I'm like, all right, great, we're good.
But big congratulations on the debut, Nancy.
Thank you.
What's the name of the debut, though? Let's say it out loud again.
The Sword of Mercy and Wrath.
Okay.
The Mercenary. I like that title. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cover's pretty awesome too. I would show it, but I don't have it with me. But yeah,
Ingram. Only
You
if it
can
was
get on
like,
there later, Niggins.
hey, later.
but yeah, I mean, we've got some great books coming out. I mean, looking ahead to spring 2023, I mean, we've got your book, PL, Justin, your book's coming out around then. We've got Thomas Howard Riley's sequel coming out. So that's the problem with getting into indies, is that it's great that they come out so fast, but then you suddenly start a bunch and then they all come out at the same time. So.
And then your TBR is like 20, 30, 40 long.
Yeah.
That's why
hundreds.
I try to be.
Oh, well,
That's why I try to be kind.
Maybe I'm
and
underestimating a bit.
I try to be kind and only release one book every 2 years.
Yeah. When you said that
It's
your
a
book
service.
was slightly delayed, I thought, phew, actually it's quite helpful for me.
Well, you don't want to have that, now we talk about that, we talk about a lot on a lot of the blogs. You don't want people to think you're in that Rothfuss Martin, loop where, you're not publishing your books when people are expecting them. So I commit to publishing a book a year. So that's my thing. I get one out every year, and so but as long as I'm alive, you'll see a book every year. So
I couldn't publish a book in a lifetime, I don't think, but so I really look up to you guys. It's not an easy process writing a book, but I've learned a lot being on Twitter and authors. There's a few ideas going in my mind. Might work on a little something someday, but
we're gonna see a Matthew Higgins book.
Potentially. I mean, probably not, but just being in that community, you kind of get drawn into it as well, and you pick up on a lot of things. And especially now that I'm doing like beta reading and stuff, I feel like the amount of stories that I've read, like I've sort of got a little bit of a sense now for stories and pacing and structure and things. And so I've got a few little things that have sparked up in my mind, but I'm not as sort of creative to pull all together as you guys, but we'll see.
You don't give yourself enough credit. Most people don't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm working on something pretty cool right now. I can't say too much about it, but I'm working on an audio drama that we've got our third and maybe final draft of the pilot done. Working with this guy in America, and it's going to be like this kind of like Indiana Jones-esque drama. There's a guy who did his own Uncharted, if you know the PS4 games. He did his own sort of like fan-made version of, he wrote his own story and did his own fan audio drama around the time of the movies, actually. So we're trying to get a little Kickstarter together for that. But that's sort of my little creative outlet, and of course my YouTube channel. But yeah, I really admire you guys being able to pull your stories all together. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think everyone has a story inside of them, and the hardest thing about writing is finishing the book, right? That's the hardest thing. And once you finish, the odds are I'm sure the likelihood of success goes up in terms of you getting it published. So, the main thing is try and finish, right? So
yeah, the number of books that get published that haven't been written is 0. So you got to write it.
That's one point.
I've sort of got a half-written prologue that I've been working on, but I've got nothing beyond that. But we'll see, maybe someday. But it's great talking with people like yourselves and learning from you and picking things up and yeah.
Well, basically, is you never stop learning as an author. We're all striving for continuous improvement. It's not like we're just you wrote a book. Oh, sorry,
I can retire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most authors couldn't, even
Not
if they
even
wrote
close.
more than one.
Yeah, it's all about trying to be better, and you're only as good as your last book, and you hope your audience sees the improvement in your writing as you progress. And I mean, Justin, you teach writing, it sounds like, at the university level. So I'm not sure how your students have found their experience in terms of like a lot of them, I'm sure, are writers or aspiring writers, and and then they know that you've wrote successfully, published some pretty popular books. So I'm not sure how they take to all that, but
I think most of them probably have no idea who I am until after they take the course, and then they go, "Oh, he's actually written stuff," and then they look and be like, "Oh, he's like known, kind of." And I'm like, yeah, kind of, little, sort of, maybe more in like the UK and Australia and other places. But yeah, it's getting around now. Maybe by the time my fourth book's out, people will be like, I'm taking this class by this author that I knew about before I took the class. Right now, it's like, I have no idea who that guy is.
What's it like for you, sort of being an author, but also then teaching that craft? Is it? I guess there's two kind of different skill sets, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're limited in terms of the content that you're tasked with teaching. So some of my classes are, for example, freshman composition. So it's not like I get to spill the beans on the craft of writing the hero's journey or the best way to plot a story. I mean, like, a lot of my students aren't interested in writing. They're interested in medicine or business or, a variety of things. But that's okay because I still get to teach the creative writing stuff, which I do love. But I'm not one of those people that studied something else and then went into writing. I've been studying writing since forever, and literature and creative writing, English, it's all in my blood. Words, linguistics, philosophy, sociology, all of it is part of storytelling for me. So when I teach, like, you can give me any student that has any kind of interest whatsoever, and I will find a way to get them to care about writing in order to channel that passion into whatever it is they actually care about. And that's what I think makes them like me as a teacher, but it's also why I like teaching, because I genuinely believe all of those things that I'm teaching, because that's why I write.
Yeah. It's awesome. And it's true that you wrote your first book, Master of Stories, was your thesis, wasn't it? What was that like, writing that as your thesis? Was that like the original idea, or did it kind of like grow into, oh, okay, this is actually now becoming a thing now, I can publish it? Like,
so I wrote the first 200 pages of my debut over the course of like 15 years, which I wouldn't recommend. That's a stupid thing. And I tell everybody that. Would I go back and change it? No, because I am who I am, and that's part of who I am. But I specifically chose to do my master's degree in literature and creative writing and focus it on writing a fantasy novel for my thesis, because I knew it would force me to finish my thesis. So, and I had to. But it was still a challenge. I only wrote a third of what I had outlined because I had no idea how to outline a book, let alone a series. So I thought what I had outlined was a book. I was like, oh my gosh, this book is a series, which means the series is a super series, which means I am in deep trouble here. I am way in over my head, but I know what I'm doing. So in theory, so it all, it's working out. Yeah, some people know. So I graduated from Harvard. That's where I did my master's thesis. It was the longest master's thesis Harvard has ever had because it was a fantasy novel.
And a chunker.
Yeah, but there was like a critical theory part and all that other stuff. But again, like I said, like I've been studying this stuff for so long. I love it so much. That's why it's so great to talk to other authors, because everybody cares about it in different ways. But talking to people who get it, who know what the writing process is like and what it's like writing a chapter and then finding out you're going to have to throw that chapter out, or all the different ways of finishing a narrative that are good, but maybe not the best. And then you're like, well, which one do I pick? And how much time do I want to spend on this? Like, all those little things that you only find out when you write a novel. You don't find them out when you're writing a paper or in English class. You only find them out when you're writing a novel.
Wow. It's such an interesting way to get into writing and learning that process. And like you say, I guess from what I've heard from other authors as well, like you say, you just got to do it and learn by doing it. And see, how did you kind of start your debut? How did that come about?
it kind of just sort of like I guess like Justin, like I've been writing since forever. I think like most authors have been writing since they were a child, since they could write, basically. And I think it just came out of like I was playing a D&D game, and like classic, fantasy author, D&D player. I was actually the DM, and I made a world that like everyone was a werewolf. It was kind of cool. I was just like, this is a cool idea. Everyone's a werewolf. How would like there be kind of religious pushback against that, or maybe not religious, but like spiritual pushback against that? And then that was how the order came into existence, the Order of the Golden Sword. And then it became sort of a story about, like, I was like, okay, this has potential to be something. And then it kind of transformed over the course of about, I think it's been 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
That I've been writing it. And it sort of, it took shape. And then I took a break for a long time and wrote another book. And then came back to this one, and I was like, okay, I'm reading it again. It's kind of bad, but it also could be kind of good. And then, because it was the first novel I ever really wrote. Like I'd wrote bits and pieces here and there, but this one was the full complete novel that I've ever wrote, the first one. And then I was like, yeah, okay, I'll have a go. I'll self-publish this one. And, I'm committed to that path now. And it's kind of like, it's exciting. It's really, really exciting. Because the indie community is so supportive. And now I guess we'll wait and see. I mean, people have liked it so far, and yeah,
I saw it's doing pretty well on Amazon the other day.
Sorry,
I saw it was doing pretty well on Amazon the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah. Amazingly broke into the top 100 new releases.
Hey, and fantastic!
That's amazing.
I had swiftly dropped after that, but
we'll take it.
Yeah,
we'll take it. Like that's unbelievable. I would have never had any idea that it would get to that level. Like I expected maybe a few of my friends would buy it, and then nothing else. But yeah, it's been a wild ride so far, and we'll see where it goes from here. And I'm excited. I have a few exciting things coming up in the next few weeks, and I'm going to a local festival where I'll be like hosting a panel and talking about my books, and
awesome.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, that's my 2-week-old son upstairs. I don't know if you can hear that.
Wow, congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea. Wow.
What a big month.
Yeah, it's been a huge month. So yeah, he's just, I might have to pop out soon because he's just woken up.
Well, but we might need to change the link because it's going to kick us out in about 5 minutes anyway. But yeah, I'll put a new link in if we need to do that. But yeah. So something that you guys, I noticed across all your books, like you include a lot of like sort of takes on mythology. With PL, we've got the Atlantis mythology. Justin, I mean, you have so many different sort of inspirations from mythology and sort of making your own one, particularly at the beginning of Master of Sorrows. And then in NC, as you describe it, you're taking a lot from inspiration from your indigenous culture. That's something that that a lot of fantasy authors do. What's that like for you guys, sort of including that mythology, and what kind of place do you think it has in fantasy? Yeah.
I mean, from my point of view, just you talk about trying to make something original, right? Well, nothing's truly original in a way, but I find it, for me, I love being able to sort of pay homage to mythological tales. In my case, Plato, with Atlantis, and I tried to include a lot of elements that are actually, very close to what Plato intended. I believe. I mean, who knows what he intended? He's been dead for a while, but as far as what my research has found, my limited research, that a lot of the elements in my book are close to Plato's original tale, in terms of the Atlanteans being this huge colonial superpower, and having imposing their might through naval supremacy, and and then suddenly disappearing, having potentially run afoul of the gods or something like that. And but yeah, it's great to have, I think, to be honest with you, as an author, just helps give you a template and helps give you things to start with. And so but there's so many fascinating stories that have already been told. It's great to have a unique spin on those original stories. And but to be honest with you, I think it just makes things easier. And depending on what kind of tale you're trying to tell, I think you can make it really fascinating to actually reinvigorate those stories, and have people who may not have been aware of those original stories, have them become interested in them, right? So
Yeah,
That's a very eloquent answer. I would,
PL,
I mean, that's like, I feel that definitely, but I wouldn't have been able to put it in words like that.
I think the word reinvigorate is really really great. I can imagine with NC, for example, with the indigenous cultures, it's a way of reintroducing things that are historical and familiar, but also bringing new life to them. I did the same thing with I look for resonance in all the stuff that I do, like Matthew was saying, like I've got so many other, I'm creating whole mythologies, but I'm borrowing from all existing mythologies at the same time and trying to blend them in a way that it feels like something that's new, but also something that feels old, something that is resonant and like, feels familiar, but is not. And so that's really fun for me, is taking things like, okay, here's my inspiration, which people would recognize, but let me take this inspirational source and repurpose it, reinvigorate it, give it new meaning. So one theme, for example, you've got werewolves, NC. I have vampires in my book, but they're not vampires like we know in our existing mythology. And there are many mythologies of vampires in books that are different. And my vampires have a completely different origin story than other vampires, but at their core, they are still grim creatures that feed on human blood in order to survive, and which terrorize people to some extent. And so that's a familiar thing. But I'll do that with anything. Like if I can pull in gargoyles, then I'll turn them into something else. If I can turn in gods of certain cultures, I'll take that and I'll repurpose it. And it's just reinvigorating things, reimagining things in ways that are unique. But I should cut off because it's going to cut us off.
Yeah, it's going to cut us off.
Yep.
I'll reset it and we'll be back on in a minute. But yeah.
Yep.
Right. See you guys later.
Yeah, I might have to head off actually.
Okay.
No worries.
It's
It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fantastic.
Feel honored to sit in this sort of virtual space with these esteemed people.
Best of luck.
Yeah, best of luck and congrats on the birth and the new novel. Can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All
awesome.
right.
See ya.
Take care.
I mean, yeah, I think like you were saying, Justin, it's really interesting about like reinvigorating. That PL said. I think it's not just an important way of bring up cultures that maybe people in their own culture don't know about as much because for whatever reasons, the impact of colonialism and such, it's sort of been suppressed a bit, and they've lost a lot of that. And it's not only a way of reintroducing that to their own culture, but also a way of introducing other cultures into our Western culture. I've noticed a lot recently. There's a lot of authors doing sort of like kind of Silk Road inspired fantasy. There's the First Binding by R. Verdi. Then you've also got the Bhagavad Gita inspiring the Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty, which is something that is really exciting. And you know, I think that these stories are like some of the earliest like myths and tales. And actually, I'm having a lot of fun with my Indiana Jones drama. We're basing off the Epic of Gilgamesh. and I can't say too much, but we're kind of like taking the myth and putting our spin on it, which is something that's been really interesting because that Gilgamesh is the first like story in the world as far as I'm aware. So it's actually, I get what you mean when you say it's really interesting and fun and creatively sort of a really satisfying outlet to incorporate these stories and retell them, because I guess that's what they used to do in the campfires, right? They used to retell them word of mouth, and sometimes details would change. You get the guy that embellishes his role in it or whatever, you know. And I guess in a way we're kind of taking part in that oral storytelling tradition, but now it's kind of gone into our stories and carrying on that tradition of telling things in a new way. And yeah, and it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that because in my third book that we're working on here, it's I've got exactly that. There's an oral story because I have epigraphs that I start off parts 1, 2, 3, 4. I love epigraphs.
Oh,
right?
me too.
Literary
More of
artifacts.
them.
But in the past, like book 1, it was like all scriptural stuff. So it's like, oh, this is a book of scriptures. And then book 2, it was like kind of a mishmash of like texts that were related and connected, but you couldn't see the pattern at first. Some of them were scriptural, some of them were like letters between people, some of them were pages torn out of a journal, and they gave information about what was happening in book 1.
There's a lot of well building.
But book 3 is all it's all oral stories, and it's like one big oral story, but you don't really know exactly whose oral story it is. You're not quite clear on who the characters are and how relevant it is. But then, you know, as you get to the end of the book, then you're like, oh, I know who the characters are, because the characters are not, they're not using the same names for the characters in the oral story as they do in the book, but they're talking about the gods. And this is like a story of the, this is like the same thing. This is the same thing that I've been getting in book 1 and 2. Yeah. It's the same stories about the gods and what they're doing, but it's not recognizable. So at first people are going to be like, what the heck? This is a whole new form of storytelling. But it ends up being like the oral history of the ogres in my book. So it's like a very unique perspective.
And I've seen some of that.
Yeah. And I love stuff like that. Like anytime you can tell a story in a new way, because that's like what PL's doing with Atlantis. That's fun because you get to explore it in a new way that you haven't really thought about. And anytime you can introduce that and kind of surprise people, it's like you get what you are expecting, but also in a completely new way. So you get excited about it.
Which is exactly, I mean, me and PL, I'm sure we can talk about it till the cows come home, but Gianni Wirtz's Wars of Lights and Shadow, I've only read the first book, but that, I mean, even just from reading the first book, I know from the experience, you know, you go in expecting a certain story and you're just amazed by what comes out of it. And it's one of the joys of reading is that you, as a reader, you know that something's going to happen at the end that is going to be twists and turns, but you don't know what it is. You're trying to get there to find out what it is. And I remember reading Way of Kings and being absolutely floored by some of the reveals at the end, and then also going on Reddit afterwards. I was in the Reddit fandom for a long time with the Cosmo and stuff, and I had people, like random strangers, that were responding to my posts about my thoughts on the Way of Kings and different things, and they were telling me about all the different secrets and things that I missed and stuff, like the chapter titles that related to a story that had been told earlier in the book, and I literally went around my house going, what the heck? No way.
Yeah.
And I love that when an author can do that, and it's great.
Danny's work is just I mean,
it's phenomenal.
For those of you who haven't read it, I mean, and again, not every book is for everyone. You know, the writing is, if you like lyrical, poetic prose, and you like prose that is going to challenge you as a reader, that uses every single word and stretches your vocabulary, then that's a book that you read. If that's not for you, if you like the more accessible prose, you know, a la Sanderson, you know, who you know,
workmanlike.
Workmanlike. Yeah, I'd say workmanlike prose that allows you to, you know, read the book and just keep reading without having to pause too much on the narrative, then that's, it's not the book for you. But if you have an appreciation and love for just language in general and words, and how many different ways a word can be used, Jenny Words is your book. She's gonna make you earn it, right? She's gonna make you earn it.
Yeah.
But I think the journey is more than worthwhile. She's my favorite author, and that's my favorite series of Wars of Light and Shadow. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on Angie Bookaholics channel
Yes.
with Jenny,
Can't wait.
and yeah, it's going to be fantastic with some other fabulous people. So it's yeah, we can't wait.
Where would you place your own books on that spectrum of Jenny to Sanderson, of lyrical to workmanlike?
I mean, it just seems like blasphemy to compare to even mention myself in the same sentence with those two writers, because they're
That's why I
iconic.
asked you to do it.
But I know, yes, Professor, I understand that. But I think I think I'm somewhere in between, but more towards the Janny, leaning
Yeah.
towards the Janny.
I'd absolutely
side.
agree with that. You know, I think
Um,
with your works and Janny's works, you kind of both need the Oxford Dictionary beside you. Or at least I found that. um, but they're great. No, I definitely agree. It's
Well,
kind of
thank
like in between. Yours is kind of like slightly to the left of, like more towards the Sanderson side, but than Janny's is. But yeah, it's just beautiful, beautiful prose. And especially reading this, I'm really appreciating the second book right now, lastly, Atalantians.
Thank you.
I think you really kind of reached your stride, and it's really amazing to see. But one thing I'm going to ask, I've got a little theory. I'm going to ask if I'm right on this, if maybe this was intentionally written. So the main character is a guy called Othran. He's a kind of like obnoxious nationalistic bigot, basically, at least at the beginning. Um, and every time he sort of mentions one person from the history, he kind of goes in and mentions about five other people from the history. He can't just sort of mention one thing. He has to tell the entire story. And so my theory is kind of was that kind of like intentional, that he's such a nationalist, that he's got such pride in his history, that anytime he sort of mentions anything, he has to go into a deep dive of the history. And was that sort of intentional, that sort of every time there's kind of like this world building, every time he mentions the history, and it really goes in deep. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few reasons for that, to be honest with you, Matthew. One is that, when we see prequel trilogies in the future based on some of these historical characters that lived hundreds of years before Othran, you will see that, the way he lionizes them, they're not going to be quite exactly how he envisions them. Let's just say he has a rather idealized view of some of these characters, and they're not going to be the way that he thought they were. And of course, no one can know what someone's really like, other than historical accounts of someone who lived hundreds of years before you and your ancestors, right? You weren't there.
Yeah.
So that is one reason. Essentially, it is helping to prep you for what will be the prequel trilogies that I plan to write about two specific characters. One being the Purple Prince, which Othran idolizes, and the other being the first king of Atlantis, Atlant first. Yeah. Second, because and I think if you think about in the context of, let's just say, traditional European monarchies, they're very much insular and inward looking, but also looking back at the past. Queen Elizabeth, and not just Queen Elizabeth, but let's just say monarchists, royalists would look back from Queen Elizabeth and see a nexus to Queen Victoria, and would see a nexus to the previous Queen Elizabeth. And because that's part of the whole mythology, right? If you want to call it mythology of royal families and their traditions and their lineages, and that's what helps make people almost worship these royal houses, and Othran is no different, right? It's no different in an Othran's time, and how they're always looking back to almost invoke these characters that lived before them to enhance their own prestige, right? A lot of their prestige is built upon the people who came before them because they were so great. Well, I'm the descendant of so and so, so I must be amazing, right? So that, and of course that, because when you deal with these patriarchal um, rulers, they obviously, it's the authority and the power is passed down, from ruler to ruler. So part of what makes you great is because you were the son of so and so, who was the son of so and so.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's why it's done.
I really love it. I mean, I could just pour over the books. I listened to the first one on audio, and I think it's a very different experience listening to an audio as it is reading the book, and you have sort of maps at the back, and the appendix is really kind of quite chunky and very well thought out. I'm just in awe of your world building. And how long have you sort of been planning this for? How long have you sort of been doing a little world building details and things?
Well, I think, as Justin could attest, I think as authors we could almost just world build and not really write the book if we didn't stop ourselves, because these characters, their backstories, their lineages, their family histories, they all live in our heads, right? And as authors, it's very natural for us to create these these worlds around the characters and have these different societies and realms and cultures and religions and histories, and all self-contained, all autonomous, from, if we want to write books about all these different places and things, we could, but you're confined with the span of your life to only write so much, I guess.
Yeah.
So hence we choose to focus on certain elements. But no, it's quite natural. I mean, I have maps and family trees of all the royal families in my, of all the countries.
Wow.
And all the realms in a Crimea in my world, and then some. I have histories going back, hundreds of years for all of the realms. I have, it's all intertwined. But I mean, I don't use them other than, for fact verification, to make sure that, this person lines up with this person in terms of when they were born and when they passed away and whose son or daughter they were and that sort of thing, and who ruled next. But
I respect that.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure you have the same. I can't wait to get into your stuff, because
yeah, I mean, because there are other authors that they write as they go and they make it up as they go, and they only need to have it like 70% figured out, and that's a thing, and that's okay. And they'll retroactively figure things out and add things and kind of and we do that too. Like, everybody does that to a certain extent. Can't escape that. But when you have all of that research that you've done, you are authentic to the world you've made, and you don't need to include it for the reader to feel it. Like, they know, and when you include those little details, it's like those things that the Reddit community was talking about. Like, people are like piecing it together because they'll figure out these are connected. The author actually figured it out. It was like, not just making it up. Like, this is a whole thing. And you're like, yeah.
That's what I've been saying a lot. I've been commenting a lot on some of my beta reads that I've been doing, is that even if you don't include this character information or this little well-building tidbit, sit down, maybe play some music, figure things out. How do you visualize it in your mind? Know it yourself, because your readers are going to know whether you know it. If you're not confident in your world and your characters, they're going to pick up on that. If you know your world back to front, the readers are also going to pick up on that, and they're going to love that. So it's interesting you say that. That's something that I feel strongly as a reader, from a reader's perspective. We know when authors know their world, and when they're and when they kind of don't. So yeah. What's really interesting is the difference between your two worlds is that in the world of Atlantics, they do know their history. I'm sure that there's lost elements and things lost to time, but for the most part they are aware. Whereas in Justin's world, they're kind of less, or at least because they come from a tiny little village called Chain Blue. Our characters, for the most part, are kind of unaware, and there's a lot of history that's lost and being corrupted. So it's interesting, like, seeing the contrast. But you also, like, you have the world building there, Justin. It's just the characters don't know it. And it's interesting coming from those two perspectives. One where the characters are very aware and very invested in their history, and another one where it's kind of been like lost to the world, and they're rediscovering that. And but both are just
Figuring out
amazing
the
things.
contradictions, and they're like, well, hold on,
Yeah.
which history is true here? What's going on? I don't know.
Yeah.
And the reader's like, I don't know either. Like, what? Tell me what's going on. Like, which side are we on here? What's going on?
Yeah. And I'm sure I'm going to look back in like, I don't know, what, 20 years when you finished more of the books. I'm going to be
12th
like,
book, 18th book, something. Yeah.
yeah, like Justin, I knew it.
Justin had it planned from the beginning. He planned a clue in book one, which I have, by the way. People are going to be like, and I did. I just walked past it.
I love that. I love it. I can't. Oh man, now I'm getting more and more stoked to read Justin's work. And we writers. I mean, let's face it. We. It's not because we think we're so clever. It's we like to have fun, and we like to. I think that I love to hide things in plain sight. Yes. As an author, I love to do that, and I feel that as the series evolves, I'm sure Justin feels the same. Is that someone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see that. Like that's the reaction you want, and of course you want people to theorize and speculate about certain elements of your work. I wonder why this happened. Oh, I think I have a theory why this happened, and that always just tickles me pink when people DM me and I know why or how Atlantis was destroyed, and I know who did it. I know why, and that stuff just I love
it. I love it, especially with the Cosmo books. Yeah.
Sometimes usually they're not right, but sometimes they are, and you're like, well, I can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
But usually they're like completely off. You're like, that's an interesting theory. Maybe I'll work some of that in. Probably not, but that's nice.
Yeah, do you ever get it when you're I should have thought of that,
Yeah. Some readers have come up with some fabulous ideas about what they believe is the actual storyline of this, and I love it. But and there's times I wish, oh wow, that's really fat, that's really phenomenal. I wish I could incorporate that. But I think one of the things that I really enjoy about being a writer is that you do, as Justin said, and I am definitely a plotter. And for the most part, like Justin, what I love about Justin as well is that he has a very ambitious series planned out, right? And that I really respect that. And then so do I. I have a 7-book series planned out, and then prequel trilogies, and another 7 books, all in the same universe. And so it's quite extensive. And it sounds like Justin has something similar. And I feel like when you look back at a writer's body of work, I think there's something special about when they've built this huge, almost like a compendium of a particular place, like Tolkien, like Wirtz, like Erickson, where you can go back and wow, there's so much here to immerse yourself in, right? It's almost limitless, right? Yeah, I love that. Love it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And you can tell the difference too, because if you read an author who writes a trilogy and then they expand on it afterwards, it's got a different feel to it. It's still good because they're great writers, but it's not the same as somebody who's like, I have a very long story to tell, and I'm breaking it into pieces for you so you can enjoy it, but I'm also giving you little slivers of what's coming so you can anticipate it. And then you anticipate it, and you're like, oh boy, this is going to be good. I'm excited. And that's a very, very different thing. And then you get it, and then you got to go back and look at all the pieces you missed. It's so enriching, I think, from a reader's standpoint, from an author's standpoint. Like, and there are things that we put in that I think, again, hiding it in plain sight. And then you talk to a reader, and you're like, oh my gosh, like nobody saw the thing. And then like somebody comes up to you and it's like, I saw it, I knew it. And you're like, thank you. I thought it was obvious, but clearly it wasn't. Like my editor is my temperature gauge, because if she can't immediately tell, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm all right then. But if she's like, even after I tell her, she's like, oh, I didn't see the clues. I'm like, oh, I got to be less opaque then. I need to be a little more obvious about, because I thought I was being really obvious, but clearly I know the world and nobody else does. So that's mea culpa. So that's fine.
That's awesome. I Yeah, and you know, there's always typically like a watershed book in your series where people go, "Oh my God!" Like you know. So for me, that's my book three of seven. That's gonna be like,
Oh,
"Oh my God!" And you
oh
know,
goodness.
and that I think I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that when as you read a series, I know that I've had those moments with other author series with like, oh my God, this has changed the game now. And I think that's another aspect that we as authors strive for is you always want your audience to be like, I love when people go, I have no idea where this is going. I'm just gonna read it and this is fun. And like and you leading them down garden paths that aren't necessarily, going anywhere and kind of disguising the big reveals, like which is also fun. So but I will say that for my series, um, I do not write. People may look at my series and say, "Oh, well, there's a lot of world building," but there is nothing in there that isn't harped on that isn't relevant later. And that's the one thing about my. I'm sure Justin's series the same as like if you hear certain places being referred to, there's a reason for that. It may not pay off in this book or the next book, but it's going to pay off
Yeah.
down the
Which
series.
is rewarding for the people paying attention, and the people who aren't, it'll be fine, right? Like we're still telling them a story, and it's gonna be fine. But yeah, that's awesome.
That is awesome, and especially like you're saying, like for rereading value, it's great. I mean, I haven't actually, I've never actually reread a book yet because I just have so many books on my TBR. I don't have time to go back round, but eventually one day I kind of plan to go back through some of my favorite books, and read them back through and get that satisfaction going. That's what you meant right there. And I love the way it creates an interactive thing between the fandom and authors, but also, it's self-sustaining. So the fandom, if an author doesn't want to be part of that, and it's a bit overwhelming, then you can just let the fans go wild and they have their own places to go do that. But if you want to get involved as an author, it's fun to kind of watch and see on the sidelines and see what people are doing, and that's great. And it's all, building this community, which I guess is the heart of it, is what it's all about. Stories about community and entertaining the community, and that's what I love about it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you spoil things for people, PL?
I tend to see. For me, I think what I do is I give people enough, enough for them to go, well, he keeps mentioning this, so this must mean something. But then I think some things are a bit more innocuous that people may go, oh.
What if they message you on Twitter and they ask you a question? Will you spoil it then, or will you just keep it close to your chest?
No, I will give them little hints. Sometimes I'll give them a little tiny hint, but I won't spoil it. I can't do that. Because I want them to buy the book and have the experience and read it, right? Like for example, there's a particular what I will say, there's a particular country realm that I keep referring to that was referred to in Drowned King. It was a place you've never seen yet, and it's referred to in the last Atlantis, and it's more detailed. There's a lot more detail, and there's a character that actually tells a story about his fight there. And I keep mentioning this place, and one investor is like, you keep mentioning this place, like there's got to be something. It's like, oh yeah, and by book 3 you start to get a little inkling of why, right? But those are things that I tend to do with my series. I don't give away, and if someone messages me, I don't give away all the goodies, but I kind of point them somewhat in the general direction. So how about you, Justin? What do you do?
Well, we've had a few conversations.
I hide things in plain sight, like you said. So sometimes I will tell people exactly the answer, and they won't believe me. Or they will ask for something, and I'll say sure, and I'll give them a lot of detail, and they'll be like, "Whoa, that's so great that the author told me all those things." But now I have even more questions, and I'm like, "Sorry." Just whetting your appetite a little, and then they're like, "Oh, but wait, but does that mean that?" Well, you're gonna have to wait for that one. So I will answer people's questions, probably more than I probably should, because I like talking to fans.
Well, I think it depends on the fan as well. So I'm one of those people that I do like to go in sort of not being spoiled to a large extent, but also especially going through the Cosmere, I'm not I'm not intuitive enough to pick up on a lot of the stuff.
I'm
And
not
so
either,
I went in, yeah, it's quite difficult until you get kind of tuned into it. And so I went in and looked up everything I could find. And so very early on, I was aware that it was an interconnected universe. And rather than kind of like letting myself figure out, oh, this character's this person and being put in, I was kind of looking up the little like cheat sheets, which I found really interesting. So I guess it depends as a reader, and it depends which book I'm reading. With the Cosmere, I like to do that as I was going along. Whereas with other books, I like to be taken on the journey. I mean, I wouldn't dare go any near of spoilers for Water, Light, and Shadow. I really want to experience that. But for others, I'm happy. I want to cheat. I want to know what's going on, and if I'm not clever enough to get it, I'm gonna use the cheat sheets.
Yeah, that's fair. And I feel the same way, honestly. When I read Sanderson stuff, I don't use the cheat sheets, but I kind of wish I had them, because I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. Like there are times where there's a conversation happening and I stop and I'm like, why is this happening? This doesn't feel like it's contributing to the main narrative. I feel like there's a secondary reason for this. And it's not because it's setting up something that's going to be relevant later in this book. It's because it's connecting something in other books or series or Cosmere related things. And I can appreciate that in some respect, but also as a reader, I'm like, I don't want to have the cheat sheet in order to appreciate this. And I feel like if I don't, I'm going to lose out on a whole piece of the puzzle. And then I feel stupid, and I don't want to feel stupid because I'm not a stupid person. So that's not fair.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that Sanderson puts in there just for people to have fun with and to recognize. And if they see it, it makes them enjoy it more. But if they don't, it doesn't cripple the narrative either. So it's like,
And it's also about the way an author executes it as well.
Yes.
So, for example, there was a absolutely humongous spoiler that I accidentally got myself spoiled for, an Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. And, at the time I wasn't too disappointed, but I think that was probably the most disappointed I'd had that I'd accidentally spoiled myself. But then as it was coming up to this moment, I was like actually really getting hyped for it. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know exactly when. So I was spoiled by what happened. I knew roughly when, but I didn't know exactly when, which actually made it more tense because I didn't know the precise moment. And then when it happened, I remember, and this is why Oathbringer is my favorite book of all time. I'll never forget this. I was sat in my room in the lounge, I think, in Cornwall when it was during the pandemic, and I was really, really voraciously getting into Sanderson. And it was about 2 a.m. Or no, it was about midnight, and I was in the 17 Shard, the fandom. I was in their Discord, I think, or I was on Reddit, and someone said, just keep going, keep reading to the end of this part. And so I was like, okay, I'll keep reading to the end of this part. And I'm so glad I did, because this moment just hit me like a bombshell. And I was just devastated. I was in tears this moment, even though I knew it was coming. The way it was executed just absolutely just gave me a gut punch. And I haven't come across anything that's hit me quite as much as that moment emotionally. And so I've always sort of been chasing after that. And I love it when authors can do that they can hit you with that gut punch, whether it's a twist or an emotional moment. And that even that I knew it was coming, it didn't spoil the moment for me, because it's about the skill of the author and the way that they write it that touches you. But yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's what every author would love to be able to have people say about their books, right? That they deliver emotional moments that linger, that resonate with the reader for months and years to come. That's what every author wants, right? So
it's what inspires people to come back and keep reading the book or read it again.
Yeah.
Because if you can enjoy it, even knowing what's going to happen and being vaguely aware, oh yeah, I can't remember exactly when this happened, but I remember I felt really strongly about it, and I can't remember the details, but here it's coming, and there it is. Oh, great. Like that's a really great, really well written book. And it's difficult to do it well as an author. So to achieve that, that's a high pinnacle thing.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, as authors, we do know though, when we read our works to go get that, I think that's going to resonate. You hope but you can't be sure. But the payoff is, yeah, when someone says, "Oh, that scene,"
Yes.
you know what I mean? There's that just got, like, you know, I mean, I know for me, in my second book, you know, Tim Hardy, who I think is a phenomenal author, a good friend of mine, who writes the Brotherhood of the Eagle saga.
The
He's
Hall
like,
of Bones. Yeah.
yes, he's
Yeah, I
like,
just got that the
oh,
other day.
yeah, he's like, oh my gosh, PL, that scene, you know, that scene, that battle scene was like, wow. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. I mean, that meant that, because I admire Tim and the way he writes conflict, and, you know, so it was a big compliment coming from someone, you know, of his caliber, writer of his caliber, right? So, and those are the things that you know, you strive for, right? You know, just like when I, you know, one of the reasons I put, you know, I started, okay, Master Artificers going on my TBR is because I heard, you know, people like Beth and other people raving about it. I was like, oh, well, got to go on the TBR. And then I watched a few podcasts with Justin. Thought he was a great guy. It's like, yep, that's a must buy, must read. So yeah, so those are the things that, you know, that bring you to people's works. So.
Yeah, I know. In terms of like my own book, it was interesting because when I first started writing the series, I wasn't sure if I should tell people that my hero was going to be the Dark Lord. I was like, should I just like let them find out? And originally that's what I was planning. But then I was like, oh no, if I do that, it's going to be a terrible marketing thing, number one, because I can't tell people. Number two, the people that find out are going to be really disappointed once he does become the Dark Lord. They're going to be like, this is not the person I fell in love with. So then we had to do the marketing thing, but then A, people don't believe you. B, when they do believe you, they're like, well, he's not a Dark Lord in book one. I don't
that's for sure.
know if this is I don't know if you're delivering what you're saying. I'm not sure. And I mean, you're like, marketing, man. It sucks. But what are you going to do? And then they read book two and they're like, oh, okay. I see the trajectory you're going for. I get it. All right. I'm in. But some people don't stick around for book two, right? Like they're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do? It's difficult to be able to figure out how to tell those things and satisfy everybody. But
yeah, and book two is an investment. I mean, it's one that I'm definitely glad that I did. I mean, you guys probably know I love the chonkers, but for some people, you know, they kind of look at that and they go, hefty. You know, book one was about half this size, and but
like 2/3.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to your skill that people are keeping reading on and sort of go, okay, this one, you know, I'm a bit intimidated, but I'm gonna keep going, and then we get to the end and there's a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I think it's one of those tricky things as well. I guess for you as an author, you were probably very aware that, you know, a lot of the stuff in book two had to be put in there. There's a massive chunk of learning, a massive learning curve from between books one and two, but it's kind of necessary to set up book three. And I guess in a way that similar in the way that Sanderson structured Stormlight, where Rhythm of War, I think people were slightly disappointed because you have to have those down moments to set up the next one. Yep. In that sense, book two was kind of like that because it's setting up so much and you have to have it, but you also know that it's going to be difficult to pull that off. And I think it was pulled off really well. I remember just vividly just pacing around my grandparents' room while they were out shopping, and I was kind of reading it out loud dramatically, doing the voices and things. It was great. And that ending, you have to read it, PL, at some point.
Yeah, I'm actually working on. I've started my first Sanderson book. I started Way of Kings. I'm Taylor from Maybe Two Pages, wonderful blogger. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the Cosmere on her channel with a couple other people. So eventually, yeah, I will get through the Way of Kings. I'll be the first to say the character work was phenomenal. The world building was astounding. The prose didn't work for me quite as well, you know, but there are a lot of positives about that book. Certainly more positives than attraction. The world building was astounding. Was it totally astounding? I mean, he's in a different class when it comes to world building, especially with his magic systems. And it's although you know, hard magic systems aren't my preference, you know, I have to tip my hat to the man for the depth of his magic systems. It's just you know, outstanding. So, and the character work, and I'm a character-based reader, you know.
Me too.
phenomenal. So yeah. So if I have any critique, it's just the prose didn't work for me. But that's just my personal that's just my personal preference. It's not a
Yeah, I mean, it's
indictment of.
interesting you say about the prose that I found recently when I got into the Cosmos. So I mean, I get a bit about my reading. So I really got into fantasy with the Wheel of Time, which I started reading when I was about 12. I don't know what it is. I have this thing where it's like big series, and I'm like, the bigger the series, the better it must be. The bigger the book, the surely the better it must be. I want to read the most ambitious series out there. So I'm 13 years old or something. I'm going to read The Wheel of Time. And I got through Eye of the World 3 times, I think, before each one I got to the next book. So I only got through Eye of the World, and it took me about a year. And so I've forgotten everything that's happened before. So I have to read it again, and then on to the second book, then started again with Eye of the World and the second book, and then the third one. I've actually got through the book 6 now, but anyway, that was my introduction to fantasy. And then I really got into Cosmid just as I was going to New Zealand in 2018. I took Elantris with me, and I started with that. And I really got into the Cosmere, and that was really the only thing I was reading in fantasy. And it's interesting looking back, and I was genuinely convinced that I was like a big fantasy fan. And now I look back and I'm like, nope. It was literally just Sanderson. It was just Sanderson. And so I literally, so when Rhythm of War came, I got it for my birthday in October. So I got the books in, pre-ordered them, and I got it signed. I did as well, Builders charity auction thing, and got
When's your birthday?
Signed. It's October the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's 10 days after me.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So I got it signed. So I always have to wait a month for the Sanderson book to come. And then everybody was getting the Rhythm of Wars, and because mine was coming from Weller Bookworks, if you know that in America, it didn't come on the day. It took about a week afterwards, and I was going crazy waiting for it. There's a video of me somewhere running around the garden in Cornwall with the Rhythm of Wars, like screaming because I got it. I was such a fan, Sanderson stan.
That's where I did my debut, was Weller Bookworks.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I think we've got less than a minute, so we have to carry on.
I have to run. I apologize. I do have to cut out.
Oh, that's right.
But
it's been great to have you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We should all
Thank
cut
you
out.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been amazing. So we got to do it again though.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time I'm doing something like this. So you guys have been great. It's been great having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great to talk to you, Justin. We'll see you again. Can't wait to read your stuff. So yeah, I'll catch up with you guys soon.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, take care. Bye now.
Yeah.